Food for Thought Unchained. Right now we are missing Abiomi. He went away and he's driving up north, so prayers for good luck to driving up there, that he may drive safely and come back safely. Alrighty, so this is Saturday's Food for Thought Unchained on Venezuela, a topic that hasn't been getting the coverage it really should. And to start everything off right now, here goes William. William?
Hello. Just to go over the reason why we brought up this topic, I happen to be in touch with somebody that's currently in Venezuela, thankfully not in one of the more harder hit areas like Caracas, but on the island of Margarita. And every day, we're talking about the hardships that go on in the country as they deal with not just shortages of food and supplies, but hyperinflation on a grand scale, where people's life savings have been diminished to no value, and minimum wage is pretty much not enough to be able to feed you for a day, let alone a month. And then the minimum wage is set up for a monthly salary. You go in, imagine if you tried to live for 1 month on $3 in US dollars equivalent, and the cost of living is about that. It's a pretty hard topic, and we don't really see the media coverage that we really should, compared to like North Korea, or compared to what goes on with Donald Trump or something. Here we got something that is, there's people dying constantly of famine. There's kids that are starving and they don't have medication. They don't have, in the U.S. you get the luxury of being able to, know that if you go into a hospital, they're going to have the supplies to be able to take care of you. And here you go into a country now that was so rich. It was one of the richest nations in South America that has literally gone from all the way up here to the pit, all the way to the pit. And, the real questions arise, what's going on? Is this really because of one man? Is a culmination of many things? How can it be solved? How do you get people to not decide to leave their house and their lives? What do you do with people that spent their entire lives saving up and making all this money in Venezuela, only to find out now that they're poor? And it's a really hard topic. It hits home for me personally, and we're just trying to go day by day, handling the struggles that come along with it. And I've been bringing it up with my friends over here in regards to it, and they only were at first getting a small portion of the circle of what I've been telling them day to day, till they went out and started researching it for themselves, and really got a big picture of what's going on there today. And so I volunteer you all to go onto the live chat, be able to have that conversation with us. We do have our chat window open, so you can go ahead and voice your opinions on there as well. And we would be able to go ahead and get this whole thing started.
Okay, yeah, and VOD watchers, this will be up as well. But to touch on what you were saying, I remember early on we had done a little bit of research, and we were comparing the Venezuela's economic crisis to Germany pre-World War II. And if you guys want, basically just to summarize it, hyperinflation hit so big over there that their currency literally meant nothing. They were printing paper and it had no value, to the point where it was cold at night in Germany and they were warming up by putting the money into the fire. They were able to write it by some gold backing and stuff like that, but Venezuela falls into a trap of hyperinflation where its only export was oil, right? So oil was their main commodity. The price of oil back in the day was going up. Of course, remember the $4 a gallon for gas. But then once it plummeted, it was boom. Now we're getting hit, and they're feeling the effects. And a lot of that was kind of masked with the predecessor of Maduro.
Which was Hugo Chavez.
The name eluded me, but it was masked because he was taking the money that was coming in from petroleum profits and putting it back into the social welfare programs and stuff of that nature. So you have the poor populace voting for him and keep voting him in because they're being helped out financially, economically. It's sound as to him. That's how he viewed it. But when he died, a lot of the cracks started to unveil, of course, in the drop of petroleum prices.
Mm-hmm. And the oil pretty much was like 90% of their wealth. With that going down, and with them, not having the place is literally like what William said, is people have this money, but it's nothing now. They're just a bunch of broke millionaires. That's what it is. People, all this money and stuff. And to touch on the Hugo Chavez, the Nicholas, what's his name? Maduro. Maduro. That's it's like sweet plantains. But anyways, he's not sweet. I don't know about that.
Not even slightly.
But yeah, this guy, he looks up to his predecessor to the point where he actually looks up on the image of him, and supposedly people have seen him talking to that image, which is very weird. And I guess as a role model and I guess idol, but that's kind of weird. I think the guy is trying to be like someone that he's not, and a lot of people say that he's a poor copy of the guy.
Yeah, and to touch on what you had said, it was in 2013 that he was seen, he had this big thing where it was on one of the propaganda weekly news events, and he said the spirit of Chavez came to him in a bird, and he was like doing all this stuff, but it got real serious. He's telling me this to do this and to do that, and that brings up some red flags right there. What is the man's mental state? And it's kind of weird because the populace sees him as against everything that Chavez stood for. So now they're it was weird. I watched in a video last week tonight with John Oliver. He did a Venezuela thing, and you guys could look it up. People are getting the tattoo of Chavez's eyes on their foreheads and say he's watching you.
Big brother watch over you.
And it's literally they have that going on, and it's crazy. And not only that, but it goes even further because back in 2017, he was seen talking to cows about his political moves. He's telling them this is going to be this, and this is how it's going to be, and you guys are going to help. And it's kind of weird that he's doing such things. So it goes even further into the actual stability of him being leader.
Yeah, and and then so you bring up a good point, and I think you can't go into the state of Venezuela today without talking about Maduro, but you also have to talk about Chavez, because Chavez is a big portion of the what makes Maduro Maduro. He was a secondhand. It was literally a personally picked person by Chavez. Said, let me make him the successor. Chavez himself was a character that he would always constantly fight against OPEC in regards to controlling gas for the country in order to be able to socialize it. Some people might remember in the past that he would socialize. He took over of the entire petroleum, which actually is now nationalized under one name. In the U.S., We know that our oil is divided by like, you know, a whole bunch of different companies, like Texaco or, you know, Shell, or a bunch of different companies that eventually come together, and you have like conglomerates of different oil companies in the U.S. But theirs is just all controlled by Chavez was the one that actually did that, nationalized a lot of different things besides oil, in order to bring about these social programs and take the money to these social programs. Now, Chavez, one of the things is that he was doing oil at a time when oil was very rich. It had a lot of value, and being the number one export, it was something that he could afford a lot of the social programs that he was doing, and there were mistakes that he was doing, but the cost of those mistakes weren't so high. The stakes weren't so high. Some of his policies were not bad. Some people will say, you know, they'll use this as an argument against socialism. I'm not exactly for socialism myself personally, but I have to open up the idea that, you know, not everything that he was doing was bad per se. And it's just that he had a lot of programs that would deal with the kids and hunger, and he would go into these cities and make sure they were all taken care of. And then suddenly he gets sick and he dies. And then you get Maduro that comes in, former bus driver, doesn't really have any experience in that kind of a field, just was his right-hand man.
Yeah.
You know, and here he comes in, changing the landscape. He tries, he walks away from the things that were good about Chavez, and then takes everything that was bad about Chavez and like goes all in.
Yes.
He refuses to understand when these hit him economically, and he digs in even deeper. Like when your oil is your source of income, and you're going in and firing different oil execs because they're trying to deal with private business, which is the nature of oil. You know, you have to work with other countries in order to sell it. Even when they nationalized it, they're still selling it. Citgo, if I remember correctly, is one of them. And Chevron is another one that is done through Venezuela. I'm sure, I don't know if you guys knew that. That their oil comes from those sources, and that's how they are sold in the U.S. after it's processed and all that. And, you know, when you go in, you start firing all these execs, and not only that, you know, whatever you're paying them doesn't bring food to the table. Like, you're working for peanuts. And that's actually, peanuts would probably be preferable of a payment than the dollars that are coming in. And that's making it to where a lot of these people are just quitting their jobs. And so now your one source of income for the country, you have employees that were refining it and getting it for you, now leaving. So now not only are you losing jobs, you're losing your income at the same time because you can't produce the same level. And it's a very saddening thing. And I mean, I don't want to hog too much of that conversation. I just want them to be able to reflect on this for a moment, what I've said so far, because I know there's other subjects in this, but...
Yeah, and he's rejecting aid too. Like, I mean, there's so much money that is going into it. It's like, okay, the people were around him in the Latin American countries are like, hey, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that. I don't want it. And it's a show of him being like, oh, I'm the one that's supposed to get this. I'm doing this, and I'm going to make this right. And he's not allowing other people to come in and help. And he himself makes it so, like, the money's it's going up even more. Like, the cost of food and stuff. Like, even, like, on one of the videos, it's like, the people there, we complain about inflation. We say, oh, $8 could have got me this or something back in the day. But no, literally a whole basket of food is the cost of someone's house in Venezuela back 30, 40 years ago. I mean, we complain about that. Like, we complain about it just right here. Like, oh, this thing could have bought me this back in the day. But really, we don't even feel it how they feel it. Trust me. And, like, I remember talking with William about this, like, back in at least 2017, the beginning. And it's like, hey, you know, the US dollar is relative to this and Boliviares. And it wasn't so much. It was, I think, 6,000 Boliviares, maybe even less at that time.
Yeah, when I first started talking to her, and by the way, she, like, when we first started talking, inflation had already started in the country, but it was something along the lines of, like, just over 5,000 to 6,000 Boliviares to $1 US. Currently, it's well over
100
it's
million.
1.2 to 1.3 million Boliviares to $1 US, and it's kind of sad because that means I could literally I could literally just take, you know, what I have in my pocket, and then you would be a millionaire in Venezuela. But even being a millionaire in Venezuela means nothing. To a point that even the government itself is suggesting chopping off 3 zeros off of the currency so that they can continue printing the money with what they currently have set up for the printing, which of course, you know, is just a whole nother slap in the face for the people, because that's another form of, you know, taking people's money. It's, you know, imagine if somebody in the U.S. had $100 and the U.S. said, okay, tomorrow we're going to chop off 2 zeros from your currency. You're gonna be like, WTF, mate? Like,
yeah, and that's supposed to take effect in August, that they're trying to get that pushed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy. Like, even if, like William said, he brings the money over there, the shelves aren't even stocked in the supermarket. You're literally going there, and it's looking like The Walking Dead. Like, you're going in there, and there's nothing there.
Yeah. I wanted to add too. I'm not sure, like, if I heard this from somebody or if it's rumor, but General Mills, I think, is retreating from Kellogg's.
So whatever. Who owns Kellogg? I think it's Kellogg. Kellogg is the company. So it was Kellogg that just recently had to leave out, and they raided the factory or the warehouse.
2014 was the start of that. The inflation recession that we see there now. But yeah, what I was saying with the other companies, not just the oil, but the food supply. Like, when there's no food supply, people get, no matter where you live, even in the U.S., if that ever happens in the U.S., people are going to go crazy. Like, you have a clip of a turned over truck. I believe the people inside that were commandeering the truck dead. You see people.
Yeah, if you like, I can play it really quick,
Yeah,
so you can
you
be able to
can,
see. Just because. And by the way, I do want to give you a heads up.
Graphic.
This is graphic at the beginning, because of what happened to that poor truck driver. But give me 1 second here. We'll go ahead and get.
Autopista Liberal del Centro, 21 de mayo, chofer muerto y la gente saqueando, sin importarle nada a nadie. El país que vivimos, Venezuela. Increíble, increíble.
And you can't even drive, like, and that is a real scenario, you know. Like, people are just. I wouldn't be surprised if that truck driver, although I don't know the context of it, I wouldn't be surprised if that was legitimately someone doing it on purpose in order to be able to steal this food. And it's sad because, you know, even then, what's worse is that some of those people are probably government employees that would come in, and they will take that food and then resell it on the black market for a whole lot more. And then that same government official that's selling it on the black market would come after you for selling things on the black market.
Yeah.
Like, because you're defrauding the government based on what the price regulations are supposed to be. It's a crazy situation, and one thing I haven't told them yet, and this is just a side thing here, is that just recently the same person in Venezuela, her and her daughter went to go get a taxi to come back home, and they robbed her inside the car with her daughter, and her daughter had a Nintendo DS, not even like a Switch or anything like that, but it was a Nintendo DS, something that we probably would go like, I'd be a little upset that it's probably about, what, $100 now at this point?
Maybe
cheaper.
even
A little bit less than that.
69, 70.
But, for this little girl, it's her, like, one escape from the shitstorm going on around her. And then this guy steals it from her. And probably going to sell it on the black market. That's the sad part.
Yeah.
And all because she just needed to be able to get a ride home, and all her trusted sources were either the vehicles are damaged or they're stuck, and there's no public transit. That's another thing. Funny, ironic for a guy that used to be a bus driver is not having public transit going on. And he should obviously know the importance of what people use that for in order to get around,
Yeah, he's cutting everything back so he can save what little money he can and using it on himself. Like, there in his propaganda videos, he's showing all this, but yet he's eating well. And there's even a clip too. We have that too, where
I'm laughing, but I'm like laughing at it like it's sad.
It's sad, and it's the only context in which it is funny is just imagine me right now. You see me. I'm talking to you, and we are in a dire situation, and food is not around. But I look like someone who can eat, right? I look big. I'm big.
Big.
And I go like this, and I literally stuff an empanada in my face.
And I'm here starving, I'm literally digging through the trash for food. And here's a video of the leader.
And he just, he ate the whole thing almost in one bite.
It's really sad that we see this, and obviously that's TMZ, so they use it as entertainment value, but realize what that would mean in Venezuela, for a lot of the people that are on the opposition side that see it as Maduro's fault. That's like a slap in the face. And he's not living in poverty like these other people. He's not. He's wealthy. He's very wealthy, as a matter of fact, to a point where, sanctions are being put in order to be able to stop all his wealth in the U.S. at the very least. And so, it's ironic that he has all this wealth, and then he's sitting here talking about wanting to help the people of Venezuela, but blames the U.S. for the sanctions. Well, my opinion is that you're stealing the wealth of the people, indirectly, directly,
and not allowing aid to come in,
and
using your ego.
Yeah, and then you're not allowing aid to come in, which like, you know, you have the U.S. sitting here going like, hey, we'll send people in right now to go ahead and feed and treat these people, as well as countries in South America that would be willing to do so. Like, they've set up first aid, Red Cross locations in both Brazil, Colombia, in order to be able to receive some of these people. And it's like, you know, they're requesting the money to be able to do it because there's such an influx of people trying to leave the country. So much so, and I'm gonna touch on another subject because I do want to get moving into other things, but I don't know if they've researched this enough. The people that are leaving the country, they will go to Colombia, and especially the women, they will go there to prostitute themselves, literally, in order to be able to bring back food for the people in their, you know, in Venezuela itself, because the currency in Colombia actually can hold its own. And they have food and stuff there, so they can actually buy stuff there, and they'll do it for, you know, even in Colombia, prostitution is real cheap. You're talking like $30, you know, and you're there.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's to the point where they're going out and everyone's like, oh, we're accepting the refugees from Venezuela, and they're really not. I mean, they're trying to boast that. I think recently Canada was saying that they were doing so well, and only 200 out of the 1,300 applicants, maybe a little bit more, give or take, that were actually passed in. I think maybe close to 300, give or take, was literally admitted in. And I know how everyone says, like, oh, we don't want immigration, stuff like that. That can be a topic for another day, and immigration here in the U.S. locally. But during that crisis, like, people are starving, people are dying in there, and we're like, we can't be bothered with it. And that's reminiscent. I mean, there's no Germany there, but it's kind of reminding of the Jews. Like, nobody wanted to be there. Get away from us. We don't want to take in immigration. But we'll, like, try and get notoriety wherever we can, saying, oh, we took in these many, though. We took in this. So we're doing great. And to kind of just want to, for context a little bit more, the food situation is so bad that somebody like me turned into looking somebody like him. No offense to him, but
yeah, this is literally pre Chavez and Maduro, and in the Maduro diet, as they like to joke there. By the way,
and it's literally, there was a guy in the video who has a belt like I would wear when I'm doing a special occasion, and the belt is like literally almost like about as big as I would be, but now I can't even go around him. It's so big. Like, what is it? It's the Maduro diet, and they say that. And he joked, like, Maduro's there, and he's like, oh, you look so good. What happened to you? You lost weight. And people are saying, no, it's basically the Maduro diet. He doesn't realize it's like almost a joke against him, but he's just like, yeah, it's great. And it's really not.
I didn't get shot.
Well,
I don't know, man.
I think there's a great
Somehow.
graphic, though, that kind of breaks down what goes on in regards to what's actually happening. And by the way, I want to give the credit out to CBSN for this kind of a image to give you an idea of just the level of poverty and what is really going on there. You know, 2 million refugees. That's a large. That's more than some cities in the U.S. You know, like some pretty decent sized cities have fled
Less than 2 years.
in less than 2 years. And I can tell you that number is exponentially increasing because everybody wants to get out. You know, 9 out of 10 citizens live in poverty. There's literally Facebook pages dedicated to them selling whatever they could. I've seen pages of just like refrigerators or old laptop that may, you know, still partially function for parts, radiators, any metal. They've gone as far as going into graveyards and stealing the brass and the copper off of people's tombstones to sell for money. And like desecrating people's graves just to be able to find something to sell, to keep alive. And that inflation rate, as you see, the 13,000%, that's not an understated, I can't begin. If you want to be able to see it, there's an application you can download called Dollar Today, where it's run by somebody in the U.S. That keeps track of the currency. And he's actually been behind lately because the price changes so quickly now that the value on there, I remember I was sending money to her in Venezuela in order to keep her going for a few days. And, you know, thankfully my chump change is like something that can keep her going for a while there whenever she can find something. And, you know, we're talking about, I was going to send her, like, I think it was like a certain amount, and on Dollar Today it was saying it was 900,000 Boliviares, and the person I was trading with actually did it for 1.2 million per $1. So it was like, it was already $3,000 off, and that was within, I'm not even kidding when I say a week and a half. In a week and a half, almost $300,000 difference. And that's to give you an idea of the kind of hype. And as you see there, the 90% deficit in medical supplies, that's not an understatement. People are literally doing blood transfusions with recycled needles, with recycled bags, and like people are getting diseases in hospitals. They're trying their best to avoid, but they have no supplies, none. So if you get injured or you need a medical assistance, you might actually be safer not going to a hospital than going to a hospital. It's that bad. It's kind of really just a sad scenario there.
And then we switch gears to politically, right? So we have sanctions being imposed. I know the Vatican recently went over to Venezuela, or like a entourage of him. I know that we sent delegates over there, and Marco Rubio, I believe, went over there as well.
Marco Rubio, Mike Pence had gone there as well for a summit.
And I know this Monday upcoming, they're supposed to be doing something else. I think like having this big speak out against Maduro, and Trump is trying to distance himself from that as well. He's saying he condemns Maduro and stuff like that, but right now he's really focusing on North and South Korea and maybe something on Twitter that gets him excited somewhere. But like literally you have all these differing political things, and even recently, I believe it was maybe 2 days ago, something like that Cuba, the new president of Cuba went over there, and they're standing in solidarity with them. And basically they're trying, like I know politically from the US, they're trying to talk about like there's like this UN sort of thing for Latin America, and basically the summit, and they're like this big thing, and they come together, and I guess they all have a voice within there. They're already in the process of removing Venezuela from being a voice, but Trump is so adamant. No, we don't, because it takes 2 years, the process for them to get removed. And Trump is like, no, it needs to be done now. Like they're like pushing for it to be like go against the actual like constitution, or maybe something like that goes along the lines of telling them how to handle things, procedure, telling them to go against procedure and remove Venezuela as quickly as possible. And then you also have too with the Cuba thing, and this opens a door, a can of worms as well, is that Russia and China don't want any meddling. So as far as that goes, I don't know if they're saying they don't want meddling from other Latin American countries. Maybe they don't want that as well. and of course U.S. meddling. So then that causes other things to come into play that they don't want anything really done over there. We're hitting them with sanctions, of course, and they're probably not too happy about that. Of course, we're hitting everybody with sanctions. Canada, too, I know recently. That's President Trump doing his thing. But,
It's Trump's banhammer currently.
yeah, but we have all that sort of thing going on, and literally, it's like, we're not doing anything. We're kind of keeping away from it. We're forcing that something needs to happen there, but politically, we're just not really doing too much except sanctions, and of course, freezing their assets over here.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody that's viewing live right now, feel free to be able to speak in the chat here. We are monitoring the chat as well in order to be able to reply and also get your input as well into the conversation. But we do ask that we keep it civil within the conversation, and make sure that we're trying to be as open-minded as possible, because there's going to be people that disagree on some things. And so this is not a real debate form. It's more of an open discussion form. So we're not here to have huge conflicts. We realize that there's going to be disagreements, but we ask that it be civil. We're just having a real open conversation about what's going on. All right?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, by the countries meddling, what is Venezuela's like? You know how Cuba is a communist, right? Like, what is Venezuela?
They're considered a socialist country. Their political structure, and actually this is a great thing to bring up, because we've kind of started dabbling into the real politics of things. They're supposed to have a democratically elected for people that are in the U.S., like their version of a Congress, and then they have their leader as well, like our president, and basically their group is called the Grand Assembly, and if I remember correctly, I apologize if I got that wrong, but the Grand Assembly, that group of people, they Maduro so this is what Maduro has gone in order to be able to keep his reign. He's actually gone and subverted the people. So the Grand Assembly was an elected body that, and they also have a judicial system, by the way, just like us. You know, so they had the 3 separate branches. So it was similar to how the U.S. operates, although obviously it's a different country. So there's different. I'm not a lawyer in Venezuela. I can't tell you all the intricacies of that. Ask me the U.S. any day. I'll probably be able to answer you. But basically, the judicial system was on Maduro's side. He loaded the seats up to be on Maduro's side, which, by the way, cast that as a warning for the U.S. to not ever allow a president to be able to load up the judicial side of things, because Venezuela can be the result. And then those people being sympathetic to Maduro, he kept trying to lock out his opposition in the Grand Assembly by every time the Grand Assembly came up with something that was against Maduro's wishes or plans, it would get he would dispute it in the judiciary system, and the judiciary system would say it's illegal. So, boom, like your law doesn't matter anymore. Like we'll just put it on the side. And then so finally it got to a point where he was essentially calling these opposition people traitors to the country, and finally called for a re-election of the Grand Assembly, which is not in the Constitution, and went and did a whole new election and stacked all the people that would be in his new version of a Grand Assembly to be voted into. And because nobody had any faith in the political system, because Maduro controlled all that, and it was shown that, I'll give I don't know the part of this, but understanding that there was manipulation of the votes that were going on, that the the votes weren't really counted correctly. The company that did the voting came out and said, Maduro manipulated these votes, and then imposed this whole new version of a grand assembly.
Dictator.
So now you have the Grand Assembly, which includes people like I believe it was his wife, his son, a whole bunch of people that are related to him, as well as people that are sympathetic to him. So now basically there's like the Grand Assembly that's actually elected by the people, sitting in the corner with apparently no real political power whatsoever, because everything that they ever do would be blocked by the judicial system. And then the people that they elected superseded them. The new Grand Assembly, I guess is I don't know what he calls that group of people, but that group of people apparently are the ones that write the laws now. So, it was a literal political takeover, which is why a lot of countries are calling Maduro a dictator, because you have literally circumvented a system that was already in place to ensure that the people got a voice in there. And so that's why a lot of countries are no longer recognizing the regime that's in Venezuela right now. U.S. government says we don't recognize Maduro as the current leader, which the election was just held for. And they don't recognize him because people didn't vote. Like, people literally, I know even...
And other stuff, yeah. Time for voting.
And literally, like you said, he literally said that he would give food to those that voted for him. Like, literally bribing people for votes.
Right, a crumb of his empanada.
The crumb of the empanada.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's right.
But and then it's sad because you got a whole entire political takeover, and it's a reminder also that the people couldn't fight back, and we're gonna have another topic in regards to kind of touch onto this subject, but I did want to bring it up because it would be a nice little transition over. When we do have this conversation about the right to bear arms. The reason they can't fight back, some people might be hearing this and going, well, why didn't they stand up against it? Why didn't they fight the regime? What are they going to fight with? When Chavez was in power, he had restricted gun use to a very good... They had really strong gun laws. When Maduro came in, he totally said it's not legal to own a firearm in Venezuela. Only the police and the military could have. So it was literally the police had all the weapons. The military had all the weapons. So
hello.
I think that's Diana.
Hello, Diana.
Hello.
Clip.
Hey, dear. That's a friend in real life. That's Diana, a friend of my, a girlfriend of my friend, really good friend, Joe Freshest. Time to plug it in right now. Kind of calm our stream down. Plug him in. We might put a link down in the description. He plays Fortnite, State of Decay, everything. I'm in his stream almost every day. Follow him.
Get his live stream on here.
He might be off right now, but follow my friend Joe Freshest. Twitch.tv/Joe Freshest. So, yeah, a little bit of promoting my good friend there. He's a good brother. I've known him. Yeah, he'll give you freshies if you like, but...
It is what it is.
Well...
Is he on? Let me see.
Let's not even try because it's breaking, but we'll put it down into the description.
Was that it? There we go.
No, he's offline right now.
He's offline, but we'll go ahead and put his link up in the chat really quick because I know even with the live stream, it'll be in there.
Yeah,
So
he's a good friend of mine and stuff, but kind of touching on where we left off, how you were saying they can't defend themselves because there's no thing, and people may be questioning where's the military and all this, right? That was something that I've heard talked about, especially in this recent election, and he's taken all the generals, all the stuff, and put them up with his own puppets, right? And recently, I know this is kind of a diversion, and it kind of takes a little bit of pressure off if he's really truthful about it, but he's not, is he's releasing 39 prisoners. They're activists that have spoken out against him, and one of them was a general. One of them was a husband of a local mayor. I forgot the name or whatnot. It was something like that, but a local mayor. And letting all these people out. Of course, there was recently, last week, someone from Venezuela was released, a U.S. citizen. They called him a great spy of Latin America. But his backstory is he had met a Venezuelan lady online, and he was trying to bring her and her 2 kids out and get them visas to come here.
Which probably would mean I would be a great spy also if I went there.
So basically, yeah, and he
I look like a spy, don't I?
they have that there, and he's the guy from the U.S. of course is speaking with President Trump and all that, and he's there. But you have literally the people you would think be there for you, but they're actually puppets by Maduro, and it's so bad, and it's kind of gonna think, well, this is funny, this doesn't happen, but they're literally pooing in bottles and throwing it at them, throwing it at the government people, the people who they feel should represent them, and they're not representing them. And it's crazy, like, a lot of things are going on there, and the people are killed. You know, you have Maduro going out, and he's, like, taking people, like, I forgot, we were talking about this, I don't remember the name of the person, but he was taken from his home and put in prison, and he was sick. I forgot who it was.
So, there was a political opposition leader that was jailed for being a political... he was a political prisoner, basically, and right before an election for the Grand Assembly that he was subverting the people, he went in and allowed this guy to basically be on house arrest and go see his family, and then while he was there, after the election was over, they just swooped him right back up and put him right back in that cell. Like as if it was nothing, you know? Because they wanted people to be able to think that, oh, Maduro's not so bad. He let that guy out, right? Yeah, until he got what he wanted. And then after he got what he wanted, okay, let's put him back in his cell. You know? So it's kind of... and not just that, like, the American prisoners, you know... They've arrested multiple people, and actually, besides the one that was released for being a spy, I put that in air quotes, spy, because I'm sure he wasn't spying at all. You also have people that are being arrested for simple things like there's a major bank, as I said earlier, there's a lot of government-controlled programs there. Many of which are also like the banking industry, but there was one still free banking industry in Venezuela called Banesco, and they actually operate both in South Florida, Panama, if I believe, a few other countries, and Venezuela. And they were a privatized bank, kind of like everything that we have here in the U.S. And then Maduro, as a part of his re-election strategy for this election that happened just not too long ago, wanted to show Venezuela that he's going against the capitalist mongers of the world, and then went after Banesco, arrested their leaders with the statement that they were trading currency at the black market rate rather than the official rate, which I believe at this point it's something like 600 boliviers to $1 US, which is like nothing. It's like pennies. It's like, again, peanuts would be probably preferable to what you would get. Mm-hmm. And then it's sad. Like, you know, he goes in and he just starts arresting all these people, freezing assets. So now people are worried because they had all this money in Venezuela and they're thinking the government's going to come after them. And it's funny because the leader, the CEO of Venezuela, he wasn't in Venezuela at the time. I'm sure Maduro would have gotten him as well if he could have. Then goes on and to say, like, hey, Maduro, yeah, you only know about that because I told you as a part of a report that you request as a part of being an operating bank. Like, I was following all the procedures you gave us. And those were part of exceptions that were going on per what you told us. So I don't understand why you come in and arrest a whole bunch of my people for basically telling you what happened. So, like, now you're kind of, like, getting us to a point where maybe I should just not tell you anymore, you know, and just operate like a closed-door business. It's kind of a screwed-up situation. And I thought it was just interesting that you're bringing that up because Maduro arrests a lot of people in the name of socialism, in the name of, you know, against capitalism and the pigs of the U.S., you know. And that's a big rhetoric that he goes, you know, even talking about Trump and all that is, you know, where we're just this big capitalist pig country and we're the reason why his country is being is falling apart, which is just it's definitely more complicated than that.
Yeah, and he shuffles the blame from himself to it being solely America. Now, that's not saying that we in the past have done things to destabilize certain areas, and some may say that's conspiracy theory talking, but in certain instances we could have been seen as doing something.
So basically what I think Zach's saying is like, you know, if you told us today that we were doing something to destabilize something in South America, most people would probably go, yeah, you know, that sounds about right. You've done it before. But in this case, this is really not what's going on.
Yeah, it would be way different.
And although there are U.S.-based companies that are involved in some of the stuff that's going on there, it's not a U.S. government type. It's not like I'm sure they're going, GM, hey, you know, stop building cars there because we just want to dick around with Venezuela today.
Yeah, and I think Trump is too fixated on the wall. The border wall down south to really care about anything in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I would be more like open to suggestions of him doing something in maybe Korea or Mexico before I think of him doing something in Venezuela.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say this tactic that he's doing, he's freeing the prisoners. I think it's gonna backfire. That's not gonna do nothing.
And it wants to put him on a national stage. Is what it really wants to do.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say because we have yet to see.
Yeah, I mean, the article that Hemi's referring to, they're talking about the opposition leaders, and just like I've said, he's arrested people before. Freed people before just to go ahead and arrest them again after. So to a point that I will tell you that awake Venezuelans, the ones that are not like just believing in that he's gonna, you know, free them from from the oppressors, that they are aware, like people that are on the opposition side will see this and go, hey, he's just gonna arrest them again. Like, what is his agenda is basically the question mark at the end of the day. They don't see this as an actual like gesture of goodwill, and why would it be? You know, you're gonna release your opposition for what? So that they can go out and spread their message, so that they can talk to these people and corrupt the minds of the people that you're controlling. No, he's doing it in order to be able to show the world something, and as soon as he gets something that he wants, the next day he could just choose, you know, oh, okay, well, I got what I wanted. Let's Let's put you back in your cage, and we'll bring you back out for another guest appearance in another 6 months.
Yeah, it's literally all just like I want to say, like, just kind of political peacocking. So basically, right now he's trying to say, okay, look at me. I'm doing all this good stuff. I'm strutting my feathers. I'm being good for a little bit. And then that's when he's like, he goes back to doing what he was normally doing. And it's just so crazy how, like, even his propaganda shows, now there was weekly propaganda shows with Chavez and stuff, and it's like he was there and he's doing all these good things. He's giving people TVs and stuff. It may seem little, but those little things go a great way. And Maduro was elected legitly. I mean, not Maduro, but Chavez was elected legitly back in the day because of his support of the lower class in Venezuela. He was charismatic to them. He was giving them social programs. He was elected legitly. And that's something that Maduro hasn't been doing. Every time he's been getting elected, it's been some sort of political thing that he's been doing, arresting people, like putting people out force, like in videos too, people are saying like, look, we've been being killed by like the government. It's crazy. Like living there, like, is crazy to even think. Like the crime is up more there than anywhere else right now.
Yeah, let me ask something. If say something happens to him, we're talking about Nicolas, what's his name?
Nicolas
Maduro.
Maduro.
Yeah, Maduro. Yeah, that guy. Does he have any backup, or will it be like the country be up for grabs?
My understanding, it was just that it would be the next military leader. That would be.
But
he has people that he has like puppets.
Yeah, they're like appointed people.
No,
like
somebody needs to invade that country. Damn.
But okay, so then that's a great question. So, because we're getting close to the time that we're looking to. So then, like, the question becomes, how do we solve this problem? I don't think the U.S. is doing a good job of solving the problem. I think that they're just kind of sitting back and hoping that somebody else kind of does something. While they're strong-arming with sanctions. You know, mind you, the U.S. does have a good reason to kind of sit back and try not to be, strong-arm into this for multiple political reasons. You don't want to look like you're invading a country and doing like what Russia's have been accused of with Syria. And you don't want to have a situation where the people themselves, a lot of the people there, they look at what's going on and they're going to say, these are, like, when you have a group of people that are just like, these are the oppressors, and then the oppressors come in and go, hello, like, they're...
You caught me!
It's like, that was our plan all along, that's what they're going to look at it as. We came to take you over so we can give you medicine and food. Please. Another question is, could the U.S. afford that? Realistically speaking, no. I don't think people in South America as a whole, besides Venezuela, because you have to look at the big political landscape, would look at that in a bright light, because they're going to see what's gone on with like the Contras and stuff in the past. With CIA operations and such, with political regime change, and they're going to say that the U.S. is trying to manipulate South America rather than allowing it to be its own nation. So it's definitely a complicated issue, and if they go too hard on Venezuela with sanctions, you're literally... it's already bad enough as it is that they're starving the country money-wise. You risk really getting to a point where it's so destabilized and so bad that, probably people killing each other just to get meat on the table, which that's a grotesque thing to think about, but a real possibility. And, we don't live in that kind of a society, but, if you actually watch some of these shows, you would see that that's probably something that's I've never watched The Walking Dead, mind you, but I'm pretty sure that there's somebody that's probably killed a zombie for food at some point in that show.
Well, they were killing people to eat them.
See,
Yeah, the people.
that's my point. Because in real survival mode, people won't the things that we take for granted on civilized societies disappear when governments collapse like that, and you can turn out really great at the end if you got something that happens that reconstructs the country into a greater thing, or you can have a big form of chaos, and with everybody still starving and everything there, I can see a lot of bad things going on.
And I was, one of the most extreme things that I would see happening there, cannibalism, if it's prolonged. That's a dark reality, but it's within the realms.
They've already gone after the zoo animals.
Yeah, and they even tried to do something where they were like trying to get people bunnies or rabbits to repopulate for food, and then people were keeping them as pets, and the government got really upset about that during their weekly.
The poor bunnies! You can't hurt the little bunny!
No, but it's seriously their propaganda, and they're doing that, and it's crazy. Realistically, I don't think we can get too much involved with anything. Of course, with our president being the way he is, at least outwardly showing his peacock feathers, if you will, like in Maduro in some ways. Right now he's doing all the stuff with North Korea and things of that nature, and of course he has a lot of things behind him, so he's not really going to be focusing on going over there. Even in the midst of all this, though, and it was in one of the articles I was reading, is there still people looking out for one another? So, yeah, we've been talking about Walking Dead a little bit in this, and there are bad people in there, but there's also good people. They may have done a few bad things, but they've been mostly good and trying to help others, and they're there, and they're helping one another. It's like a little community that they're doing things, they're getting food together, sharing, whatever they can share together, sharing in the hardest hit areas. And we don't know what would happen, right? If we're put in a situation like that. I can already imagine it would be vastly different here in America if something of that nature happened. Just look at what happens with hurricanes down here in South Florida. People are nasty and disgusting to one another. Like,
and mind you, with hurricanes in South Florida, it's actually pretty controlled. Florida is usually the most prepared for this kind of natural disaster. And people turn into like nasty people when it comes to gas and things like that. So
yeah, like trying to hit you, going in front of you, being greedy with the resources. And then I know recently during Hurricane Irma down here in South Florida, they were selling the water, reselling the water at exuberant prices.
That's illegal.
Yeah, and it's illegal down here, but still, are you gonna get all the people that do it? No. But that stuff is happening there in Venezuela.
that's the black market.
But there is no but Georgia's going to give us some supplies. But Alabama, no, that's not happening because the leader of Venezuela isn't letting it in. So for, I think, something to actually change there, one, he has to either be gone or at least change his ways about letting people in there to help. You can't have an ego forever, buddy. Like, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to crumble and say, look, my country's starving. It's gonna get to the point where it happens to him, and when it happens to him, he'll probably crumble. He'll crumble like that empanada did in his mouth when he was eating on live television.
Yep.
But
the thing is and this is a real thing, is that he's scared of that, because if he lets that in,
he loses.
He loses big time. One, it confirms that what he's doing is wrong. Two, he's already caused all the damage that's going on here, and like he can't fix it, So like, why are we having him as a leader if he can't fix the problem? And I mean, let's face it, South Florida, and that's where we're from, by the way. Anybody that's new to the channel, In South Florida, we have a lot of people from Venezuela. If you've ever taken an Uber or a Lyft in South Florida, you probably have like a 8 out of 10 chance of, or 4/5 chance of finding a person from Venezuela as your driver. And it's you know, these people, they work hard and they're trying to support their family in Venezuela. I've literally, there's a shipping company, I won't give a name because I don't want them to, I don't know if they want that to be associated with them, but they get people that come in and they send boxes of just supplies and they manage to get it by without people raiding and looting their supply, you know, whatever you're shipping, which is amazing, by the way. For the if they ever do watch this video, you guys do an amazing job, even with all the complications that come about. And you know, people are trying to be able to send supplies over, and it's a hard thing, and an operation like that, you know, even on a small scale, helps keep some of those families afloat. But I mean, I've literally seen boxes bigger than Zach.
And that's pretty big. That's pretty big.
And they all they have is just cereal and can't not even canned goods like pastas and you know, things that you just when you go into the stores, it's just hard to find. And so and by the way, if you know any great cause that supports getting food and supplies over there, I encourage you to donate to those causes, because you know they don't have anything else there. It's really a difficult. It's very difficult, just to say the least, and especially the hardest hit places. I know for me, my heart's in the island of Margarita, but really the big thing is Caracas. Like, you know, there's gangs of kids just trying to get scraps of food from the trash, and fighting to survive. It's a whole nother ball game. You know, we live where we go to the corner store and we just grab something off the shelf for $1 or $2 and we're good. And if we're really poor here, we have programs, you know, like in South Florida, Feeding South Florida, which is a part of Feeding America. They don't have that real program there, and even when Maduro sends out the monthly box of food, it's literally like I could hold it in my hands, and it's supposed to last you for a month, and it might be rice that's spoiled, you know, and coming from like Mexico or something. It's really bad. I wish I still had the photo that she sent me of the box that she got of food, which was literally supposed to feed a family of 4 for a month. And it was like, realistically speaking, you know, definitely not a family of 4 in America. That would be like a snack.
Yeah, Happy Meal.
Like a Happy Meal. But it was literally like, I hope you don't mind if I... there's this bag, you know, like pretty much I could have fit most of the stuff in this bag. And that's supposed to feed a whole family for a month. I can't imagine anything that you could put in this bag that could feed a whole family of 4 for a month. So, anything that you send can help, honestly.
Yeah, and of course you can have your charities that you donate to and stuff like that, and we can put them in the link below. Something like that. I know VOD watchers, you know, you can put down stuff in the link below, things that you may know, or, you know, organizations that do such good things. Yeah, and we're just trying to make it heightened, like the story over there, because it's not really heightened by the media. Like, they may be putting it one way. We want to put it out there. I think this is going to be our cue to end. This is Food for Thought Unchained, our first topic. Don't be chained by the mind that society tries to give you. This is Food for Thought Unchained.